Well, hello everyone, Susan Comiskey here, and we want to welcome you to Module 3 of the Reentry Program. And first of all, just want to say congratulations on finishing your mission stint. Whether it was 10 months or 10 years or 100 years, we are so pleased to have you home again. And in this session, we're going to be looking at some of the skills that you need, the practical tools for returning home. But first of all, let me read to you from Acts chapter 14, verses 25 through to 28. And we are looking at the first biblical reentry program. Isn't that amazing? So turn with me in your Bibles or your phones. And it says here, they preached the word in Perga and then went down to Italia. Finally, they returned by ship to Antioch of Syria, where their journey had begun. So they've gone out from Syria of Antioch and they're coming all the way back. The believers there had entrusted them to the grace of God to do the work they had now completed. So their friends had sent them off and said, go get them. And now they're coming back to their home church. Verse 27, upon arriving in Antioch, they called the church together and reported everything that God had done through them and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles too. And verse 28, and they stayed there with the believers for a long time. Amen. So that is our opening this today, and we're going to consider several modules for making the transition from life on the mission field to life back at home. And you can see on the PowerPoint, we'll go to the next one, that there is lots of navigation to take place. All right, there's skills that you need for this time at home. And if we look to the next one, we will see the different areas that we're going to look at. And you can see understanding transition, the transition cycle, potential change triggers, key concerns, managing expectations, looking forward, and in conclusion. All right, so let's go on. In this module, we will look at these skills that you need. And I want you to remember that the change of relocating from the mission field to back home is really as fast as a plane ride, isn't it? You know, you just get on the plane and go. But changing from a missionary to whatever, or being in Cambodia to being back in Singapore, or being in Japan to being back in Singapore, or being in Uganda to being back in Singapore will take significantly longer. All right, and so we're not here to alarm anybody. We're not here to frighten anybody. We just want to put those tools in your hand, and if you need them, you know where to find them. So we're going to look at the first one, next slide, called Understanding Transition. All right, Understanding Transition. And there was a man called William Bridges who wrote quite a famous book called Transition, Making Sense of Life's Changes. And you can borrow that book, you can buy that book. In fact, I suggest you read that book, all right? It's a great book. And he looked at this idea of transition, so moving from one thing to another in 3 stages. He said there is the stage of ending, losing, and letting go. All right, that was his stage 1. And this is a time where sometimes people are resistant. They don't want to leave, or they don't want to be home, you know, and they're just feeling all sort of out of whack. Emotional upheaval. I'm sad to say goodbye, but I'm happy to say hello. How do I manage those emotions of being sad and happy at the same time? It's quite difficult, right? So this idea of ending, losing something, and actually consciously letting it go. And we're going to talk more about that later on, because some people end, but they don't let go. And that's difficult, right? So we need time to process in this stage, and we have to let go and experience loss, but we also need to embrace the new. So that's stage 1, ending, losing, and letting go. Stage 2 is the neutral zone. We can finally breathe. And so we're kind of in no man's land. He calls it the neutral zone. I would almost call it no man's land. I'm neither here nor I'm there. I'm here, but I'm not there. But I'm there, but I'm not here. You know how your mind can be in one place, but your body can be in another place, and it's like, what? And so people can be confused. They can be impatient. When is everything going to feel normal again? When am I going to get back to normal life? I want to get a job quickly, but I want to have a really long holiday. How do I do the 2 things together? So people need a lot of encouragement in this stage. They need a friend to come alongside them, walk with them, and make sure that they don't make bad decisions. When you're in transition is not a good time to make really big decisions. So if somebody asks you to marry them this week, say, I'll get back to you. All right, just be a little careful there. Also too, it can be a great time of new creativity. And really because the old has changed, it can be a time of saying, you know what, in the past, I pursued engineering, but actually I'm an artist and I'm gonna pursue my art. Because there's been a natural break and a time to be creative. Maybe you decide to retrain. I had a friend that was a medical doctor, but really decided that law was the love of their life. And so they decided to retrain as a lawyer. So a lot of creativity in switching career. Stage 3, or the third stage in Bridges' model of transition, is the new beginning. Such amazing titles, right? And he says that at this point there should be acceptance. This is new. I can't go back. I'm looking forward. And there's a lot of energy and a lot of let's go. All right. And I think for many of us in the re-entry program, we're probably either in the ending, losing, and letting go stage, or maybe the neutral zone. Maybe some of you have hit the ground running and you're really able to say, yeah, I'm ready to go. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, super. You're at stage 3. But if that's not you and you're still like, that's okay. All right, that's okay. So understanding transition, get a look at that book. And if you want to read some more on that, there's lots there. William Bridges as the author. So the next thing we're going to look at is the transition cycle, all right? We're going to look at the transition cycle, and this has come from a very famous author called David C. Pollock, who wrote a book, Third Culture Kids. And you might be familiar with that book if you're a parent or a CW worker or a VK worker, but if you've worked with children overseas, you may have read that book. David has now passed away, but I was privileged to sit in many of his lectures and hear his heart for missionary kids, missionaries, people working away from their home base. And he put together this really great cyclic model of what it means to transition. So this is another way of looking at transition. So we have Bridges' model, which is boom, 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 quite linear. Now we're going to look at a cyclic model that David Pollock did. So we're going to throw this up on the PowerPoint here, and I'm going to show you here what we're doing, and then I'm going to show you another chart, all right? And this is going to help you. So the top half of the arc is what you did, all right? So you were at home, Singapore, you left, you transitioned, you entered, and you got re-established in a new community, whether it be in, you know, Moldova or Peru or, you know, Namibia or Japan. Okay, and so you've been here in the orange spot. And when if you've had me in any classes earlier on, we talk a lot about this in the top, don't we? Guess what? Here we go again. So we're going to go round the bottom, okay? We're going to go round the bottom and we're going to do the leaving, pre-departure, transition, re-entering, and involvement. So this is the bottom half of the arc. And that's why I say to you, this is a cyclic model, because Dr. Pollock was looking at the whole lifespan of a missionary, whereas Mr. Bridges was just looking at coming home, all right? And people, particularly other transitions like maybe transiting from marriage to widowhood or transiting from one job to another, that kind of thing, all right? So let me go to the next slide and I'm going to walk you through this. Now, my slide guy, there's a slide guy behind here, and he's going to toggle back and forth for me, all right? So just be ready. But you can see down this side the orange, the yellow, and the blue, all right? And at the top, red, blue, 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 orange. Now, for this case, if we can go back one, we had the blue up there, but I want you to imagine that the blue is now purple, all right? So we'll go back to the slide. So this is actually purple, 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 to show that we are on the bottom end of the cycle, yeah? So I hope that makes sense. So here we are at re-engagement, all right? and we're going back this way. So we're going to just flip the grid a little bit in our minds. So we have a social status of belonging, we have a social posture of commitment, and we have a psychological experience of intimacy. But of course, in the new culture, we're still an alien. We're still an outsider, and we still have some surprise adjustments. Now, you should have this chart in your notes. So, if you can't see all the words, don't worry. You can look at your notes, but I'm going to refer to them here to keep us all on track. All right, so you're pretty much the same as when you left home, with a few other bits thrown in. But you've been committed. You've been open and intimate with people in the terms of inviting them into your life, inviting them into your faith walk, inviting them into your journey with the Lord. You have been known. People know who you are. When you first arrived, they didn't. But you have a semblance of, this was my tribe. Now, if you've been there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20 years, of course, those things are much more magnified than if you were there 10 months. But I don't want to make anyone feel inferior. All missionary stints are valid, okay? God doesn't count in how many years, all right? He counts by looking at our heart. So we have all these wonderful feelings, but then as we start to leave, we're separating, disengaging, denial, and then we go into transition. So you can see in leaving, sometimes it's difficult. We have to say goodbye. All right, we have to relinquish roles. We have to hand over to somebody else. What if they don't do a good job? What if all my hard work goes down the drain? What if they forget about me and they make new relationships and they like the new guy better than me? All right, so what about sadness? And what about thinking about, I'll be back. But in reality, will you? Sometimes we don't go back for a very long time. So, there's a lot of emotions, but you've already left and you're bringing all those emotions with you. And now you're in transition, right? So let's read it together. What is our social status? We are statusless, structureless, and clueless. And that really is the very center issue when we're talking about navigating re-entry. We're kind of in chaos. Now, if you applied for a job before you came home, you went back to the same bedroom that you've always lived in your life, the same dog was sitting there, the same parents were there, you're in the same cell group, you just stepped into the same hawker center and they say, hey, we missed you. Maybe not. You might not feel quite so statusless, structureless, and clueless. But if you come back and your family's moved house, or one of your siblings has got married and moved out, or maybe a parent has died, or maybe you're struggling to get a job, or perhaps you don't have the income that you had before, maybe you've moved regions and you don't know anyone in the new region. So you come back and actually there's a lot of change, and there's not a lot of places where you are known. All right, so then he says that we can have chaos and anxiety, and you can look at everything there on your notes to see. So we're not prophesying trouble, we're just telling you that this can happen. And it's a little bit like grief. It can hit you at odd times. You might be doing fine, but then you realize, hey, nobody's asking about me anymore. Nobody's interested in me. They've moved on to the next team, and we can become a little bit self-centered, right? Well, don't they know how much I gave up? I don't have a job yet, huh? All right, and we can get feeling a bit isolated, a bit left out. Maybe we're not the new, cool, hot team anymore. We're the missionary. Okay, thank you so much. Next, right? And we can feel a little bit like, where am I in all of this? So this is transition. What are some of our emotions? Anxious, fearful, grief. Maybe I should have stayed on the mission field. Wow, that guy that I handed over to is really doing a bad job. Oh my goodness. And that can make it even more difficult. All right, so these are some of the things. And of course, now we begin to enter, and then finally we belong again. But there's quite a lot of vulnerability, feeling on the edge, trying to, find our place again. And I think Dr. Pollock did a great job of really explaining that to us. And I would urge you to look through each stage and say, is any of that relating to me? And I want to pick up on this here, risk-taking. When you enter a culture, when you come back and you're re-entering, you will need to take some risks. You're going to have to try something new. You're going to have to step out of your comfort boat, all right? You're going to have to put yourself in a place where, gosh, I didn't think I'd have to do this, but I'm going to try. And you need to understand that sometimes that's going to work out really well, and other times it's not going to work out so well. And so that's okay. That's part of finding our way back at home. And even in church life, you know, don't be in a rush to jump into the latest ministry, but on the same token, don't take 3 years to pray about where you should be, all right? Just take a risk. Well, I've never worked in VK before. Do you know what? I really did on the field enjoy working with children. Let me try. Let me take a risk. Let me step out and try something new, all right? Thinking too about our loss of identity. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Or maybe thinking of things like people are superficially, tentatively accepting you because maybe they remember you like before, you know, or maybe there were unresolved things from before. So it's just a very, very fluid time. And you need to understand that your emotions, your mind, your social posture can really be like on a roller coaster. All right. Now, again, it's different for everybody. If you've got a really laid back, chill personality and it doesn't bother you, hey, hang 10, man, stay cool. Cheers. But if you're a bit like me and you're like, what's next? What's going to happen? Come on, let's get going. Boom. And nothing's going. That might be difficult for you. I remember when we came back from Uganda to Singapore, just feeling very isolated, because my husband had a ministry position, but I had nothing and nobody really knew me. And I was kind of like, he would go out the door and I'd be like, okay, what do I do today? Woo. You know? And it was like, maybe I'll sleep all day. Maybe I'll watch TV all day. Oh, we don't have a TV. Maybe I'll go be a tai-tai. Oh, we don't have enough money to do that. Maybe I'll just sit here and, you know, fiddle my thumbs. So, you know, if you have a role to go to, a lot of this evaporates quite quickly. But if you don't, it may become quite accentuated. So let's go back to the slide before and just remember that we want to keep moving through this situation. We don't want to get stuck here. Now, what some missionaries do is as they try and re-enter, they kind of buff up against this block of re-engagement and they feel like nothing's working. And so they bounce back into transition and say, I'm going to go somewhere else. And they bounce around the inner part of this diagram. All right, so they never enter here and they never enter here. They just kind of bounce around trying to find a place. But that's chaos. What you want to do is to keep moving forward and settle at one end or the other. Now, you might say, well, I'll just go in reverse and I'll just go back to Japan, or I'll just go back to Uganda, or I'll just go back to Canada. Don't do it. Don't do it, okay? You need to finish the cycle. Reestablish. Do the biblical thing. This is my Bible. Do the biblical thing and come back to where you were sent out from. Tell all. I think the King James says, rehearse all that God did, and let there be a processing of what happened here so that you are now established, covered, and then you can go again. But sometimes when people it gets too difficult here, they just want to bounce back. And that's a little bit like what the children of Israel did when they got out in the desert. Let's go back to Egypt. At least we had leeks and onions there. What's this manna that we're always got? Oh, Egypt. And Moses says, don't you remember you were slaves? And they're like, no, it was amazing. It's amazing when we feel like we can't settle here, how good other alternatives can look. And this is where a mentor can really help you. Someone that coaches you along and says, come on, get settled here. Yeah, you got a long-term call to Japan, but let's settle some things here, process the past, and get prepared to go to another level. All right. So I hope that you're hearing my heart. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but from experience, I know that a lot of times people make poor decisions here, and here, because they're having trouble re-entering and they feel like they're not going to make it. Another favorite of missionaries is to find a new church. Yes, I said that. Is to find another new church because they see all the flaws of this. They've stood back from a distance and seen all the flaws and they say, not for me anymore. No one will really notice if I don't enter in, but I just kind of go around and find another block. Don't do it. This is come back to where you were sent out from. Settle, pray, re-enter, take some risks, deal with the emotions, settle back into life at home. And if truly God is calling you somewhere else, to another house, He will confirm that. That will be confirmed by others, by leadership, by friends, by mentors. But very often it's not. It's a clean break. It's an easy break. And it's easier just not to re-enter, just to go from transition and kind of circumnavigate and find something else. All right. So we're going to finish here on that first one on transition. Okay. And so I want you to remember that there are two approaches when you consider transition. There is William Bridges, ending, losing, letting go, the neutral zone and the new beginning. And then there is the transition cycle by David Pollock. And both of them, I think, are really helpful in showing us what is happening to us as we're moving not only physically from one nation to another, but we're moving emotionally, we're moving spiritually, we're moving in our thinking and all of those things. All right, so let's pause here. Thank you.